Today we take an unusual deep dive into the rather shocking crimes that had these 5 YouTubers move from the highly coveted YouTube fame right into prison cells, where they continue to rot. Let's get into it. Kicking us off is a pretty insane story, where this 30-year-old Russian YouTuber named Stanislav, aka Stas Reflay, found out the hard way why you don't listen to random strangers on the internet. Why? Well, he literally caused the death of his girlfriend, 28-year-old Valentina Valia Gregorieva, after subjecting her to verbal and physical abuse for the amusement of his livestream audience. Yeah, you heard that right. He allowed his honestly sick audience to pay him to inflict abuse on the poor woman until she could not take it anymore. And in case you are wondering, no, he's not insane. The court did psychological and psychiatric examinations and found him perfectly normal. Why then was he doing this? Simple. He was trying to cash in on the trash streaming trend that had Russia in a chokehold a while back. It's like a competition of who can get drunk and live stream the weirdest stomach-turning stuff. Of course, the more viewers, the more money. And for our guy Reflay, his antics went way sideways after he locked his girlfriend, who had only underwear on, out in the freezing sub-zero temperatures as his audience watched on. This was after already having beaten her, causing her severe head injuries. When he let her back in the house, she apparently appeared already dead. Forensic investigations found that the head injuries were the main cause of death, as she had had craniocerebral trauma and multiple bruising of the face and hemorrhaging of soft tissues. All of this happened back in December of 2020, and the guy ended up getting a 6-year jail sentence in 2021. That means he's probably heading towards his 3rd year of rotting in jail. The next one is such a mind bender, because how on earth does someone turn from making anime reviews on YouTube to planning a freaking Colombian-style massacre? That's the story of Trey Eric Sessler, a 22-year-old YouTuber who, besides making short films under his alter ego Mr. Anime and reviewing these loved Japanese animations, brutally murdered his parents and brother. And you probably won't believe this, but according to the police report, Trey's motivation for killing his family was so that they would not be ashamed of him after he'd executed his mass killings. Selfish and pretty insane by any measure. Also, one thing for sure is that he took them out with exceptional violence and anger. I mean, even the police, who described the residence as looking like a war zone, found it unusual that the entire home, front to back, was a crime scene. It's like he chased them all over the place, shooting each person several times. The 3 bodies were discovered each with multiple gunshot wounds. Now, while it was a surprise that he did this, even more disturbing was that he admitted to the police that he and one of his former schoolmates at Waller High School were planning a mass shooting at the school.
He further admitted to investigators that he studied serial killers to the point of grading their work and researching mass shootings in public areas that included, but not limited to, the Columbine shooting incident.
Again, he was obsessed with that 1999 massacre where 2 teens offed about 13 people and wounded about 20 others. Also, now that you know all that, it might come as no surprise that this kid had an obsession with guns and even owned handguns and high-powered rifles. Anyway, for the deaths of these 3 people, his dad, Lawton Ray Sessler Jr., aged 58, his mother, Rhonda Wise Sessler, aged 57, and his brother, Mark Allen Sessler, 26, Trey got sentenced to life in prison. He became the literal definition of rotting in jail. Moving on from those depressing deaths, what do you do if you need lots of views on your YouTube channel? Well, this next guy, one Trevor Jacob, reminded everyone of what obviously not to do when fishing for YouTube views. Jacob, a licensed pilot and YouTuber, found himself in federal prison after not only intentionally crashing an airplane, but also for destroying the wreckage and lying to investigators. Yep, I know that's a lot to process, so let's back up. So on November 24th, 2021, This guy, who is also a former Olympic snowboarder, took off on a solo flight in a Taylorcraft BL-65, a small aircraft, at Lompoc City Airport, California, only for him to jump off the plane 35 minutes later and let it crash into the hillside of the Los Padres National Forest. Now, Trevor probably thought crashing a tiny aircraft on some hidden hillsides wouldn't matter that much, because he recorded the entire 13 minutes of him doing it and posted it on YouTube. The video, aptly titled "I Crashed My Airplane," went viral and has about 4.5 million views so far. His real motive was to promote his video sponsor, a wallet company. Unfortunately, or maybe not, a lot of people saw through his act because he was already wearing a parachute and had a selfie stick when jumping off the plane after alleging power failure. 2 days later, he reported the crash to the National Transportation Safety Board, who started investigating. Maybe scared they were onto him, he later flew with a helicopter to the crash site, airlifted the wreckage to Rancho Sequoia in Santa Barbara, and then drove it in his truck back to the Lompoc Airport from where he had originally taken off. This was taken as an intention to obstruct the investigation. On June 30th, he pleaded guilty, and on December 4th, he ended up getting 6 months in jail. His sentence starts on January 29, 2024, so he might as well be considered currently jailed. If Trevor Jacob's case surprised you with just how dumb he was to record himself committing a crime, then this next YouTuber, Ruby Frank, will probably knock your socks off with the sheer audacity in doing the same, or even worse actually. The 41-year-old woman who ran the channel named 8 Passengers went from being a very loved family YouTube vlogger to one of the most hated creators with a felony charge to her name. Why? Well, it's a really long story, but the short of it is that people noticed, from her vlogs of course, that she was intentionally abusing her 6 children at their home in Ivins, Utah. And I mean really abusing them, from sending her daughter to school without lunch, sending her son to a behavior camp and making him sleep on the floor by revoking his bedroom privilege, to leaving the children alone for long periods several times. Her actions were so insane that 17,994 people signed a petition for Child Protective Services to investigate her. This was after she banned all electronics from her kids all summer. I mean, how reckless do you have to be for the entire internet to call CPS on you? Anyway, the police visited her home, and not just once. It turns out they had made several visits together with the Utah Division of Child and Family Service over a 1-year period before her arrest. The tipping point was when her 12-year-old knocked on a neighbor's door asking for food and water. The neighbor called 911. Apparently, the child had open wounds and duct tape around the extremities and looked malnourished. Police jumped into action, and they also discovered her 10-year-old, who also looked malnourished, at Ruby's business partner's, Joby Hildebrandt's, home. Both Ruby and Jody were arrested and charged with 6 felony accounts of aggravated child abuse. She pled guilty and is facing up to 60 years in prison. She is currently in jail, waiting for the sentencing in February. Last on our list is YouTuber Bill Omar, aka Omi in a Hellcat, who's a great lesson on why flaunting your illegally acquired wealth on social media is always a bad idea. Omi, who started an illegal streaming service called Gears TV back in mid-2016, in his own words after an FBI raid on his home that seized everything, said, "I was a multi-millionaire a week ago, and now I'm down to nothing." Now, while his lawyer, Dante Mills, argued Omi was being penalized for being innovative and creative, the real reason for his arrest was that his streaming app was committing copyright infringement, in addition to the fact that he owed lots of back taxes and was also suspected of money laundering. What's even more insane with this guy is that he probably would have gotten away with all of it if he didn't try to show the world just how much stuff he had. Going through his YouTube channel, it's quite obvious he was just screaming, "Look at me, I'm so rich now." I mean, he vlogged himself taking in a lot of deliveries of really expensive cars, ranging from a Dodge Challenger, a Lambo, a Mercedes AMG GT, to a C8 Corvette. Following the FBI investigation, Omi, whose operation was somewhere north of $30 million, admitted to his crime, got sentenced to 5 years in prison, and was ordered to pay millions in restitution. That sentencing was in March 2023, so he's currently rotting in jail for his antics.